Giles Brown.
Let's talk.
The End of America, a guide to the new world disorder. America was once the shining city on a hill. It was the country at the forefront of the world democratic order. So what's happened? It is the new thoughtful book by Alan Friedman, respected journalist, best-selling author and television producer and documentary maker. I'm delighted to say that Alan joins us live on the line now. Alan, good morning to you, sir.
Good to be with you. Hello.
The pleasure is all mine. Yes, I mean, the opening gambit of this book, The End of America. Is it the end of America, the end of America as we know it? Or some will say, well, he's just draining the swamp.
No, it's absolutely the end of America as we knew it until now, as we knew it as a country which operated with a certain proclaimed belief in democracy, even though in my book I explain the hypocrisy of the American empire and the way that many presidents have done regime change and assassinations and all sorts of stupid wars. But the arrival of Donald Trump is not the reason for the change. He's like the manifestation of a big change that's underway, in which Americans no longer seem to care about democracy. Recent polls indicate that up to 50% of Americans believe that democracy is not working. So what do they want? Well, they want somebody who appears to be a strong man. And in this period of Donald Trump, we're living at a period where the American empire is actually ending because the Russians and the Chinese and the Saudis and the Iranians and the Turkish and the South Africans and the Brazilians and all the other parts of the world that no longer follow America and are more interested in an opportunistic alliance with Putin or with China are no longer part of the American world order. Donald Trump has placed himself alongside Vladimir Putin. He has presented himself as somebody who is willing to accept many of Putin's premises about Ukraine and other issues. And this is because Donald Trump doesn't believe in democracy. He wants to be like Putin. He actually admires dictators and oligarchs because he's basically a real estate guy from New York who used to sell lots of apartments in Trump Tower to Russian oligarchs. So he sees a Saudi Arabian or a Russian as a potential customer. And all of this is turning the world order that we knew for the last 75 years upside down. And Donald Trump's apparent imperialism, his demand for Greenland, for Panama Canal, for Canada to become the 51st state, his anti-European behavior, all of that seems like he's an imperialist, but it's actually the death throes of the end of the American century, where an American president can no longer proclaim that America is the leader of the world. He's destroyed American credibility in less than 2 months. And America, unfortunately, is now no longer in a position to call the shots anymore.
Could you argue, though, that America has always been, despite there are two things. There's the image of the America and the harsh reality of what America is. So it's always had this image as this bright, shining beacon of independence, etc. But in reality, there is a much more, as Willie Brown would call it, a realpolitik sort of aspect. If you look at the way that, America, and we get a lot of people are going back to the 30s and FDR, but America was looking at itself, didn't want to get involved with Europe full stop, and it wasn't until Roosevelt actually did the hard yards and established a link with Churchill, understood what was going on, that America got involved. But from there, if you look at what happens with Korea, the forgotten war of the 1950s, if you look at the Vietnam policy, but then you look at with Nixon and what happens there, and for me this is the start of, if you like, because because he is looking at it as an industrial military complex. It's about what Halliburton are bringing in.
Sure.
So that bright shining lie that is the Camelot, which is, again, people think it's this wonderful thing, not knowing the grubby undercurrents, etc. And so you could argue that it's, because despite what the Americans try and do in 73 in Chile, regime change doesn't happen overnight. So therefore, this has been the start of a long decline into what we see now, and this is the exclamation point at the end of it.
Well, if people would like to learn about exactly how America's decline began long ago, and how America's Vietnam Wars and its humiliations and its disasters in Kabul under Biden and Obama's naivete in the Arab Spring, where he backed dictators here and terrorists there and was confused. If we want to look at how Trump dismantled the multilateral system in his first term in office, if we want to look at all that, George Bush's disastrous wars in Afghanistan and Iraq, those are examples of what I call in the book imperial overreach, like the Roman Empire that expanded too far and then collapsed. And usually empires die when there's civil conflict, civil war, polarization inside a country. Well, America is divided, and we are facing the prospect of more political violence and more of an American political system that is no longer as democratic as we once called it. Really, the bottom line is, yes, we have been on this downward trend for a long time, but what awaits us now that America has thrown into the rubbish can the idea of defending democracy and signed up with Russia and Belarus to oppose Ukraine at the United Nations, that's unprecedented stuff. Let's remember that. Now we're in a new ball game, and in the new ball game, America not only is a hypocrite, but America helps the autocrats around the world to be emboldened. And he makes for a world where it's the law of the jungle and might makes right rather than any rules whatsoever. That is a recipe for anarchy.
But perhaps the thing is, as I said before, there is the image of America and there is what is actually going on. And so with the current president, he has the image of himself as this strong man on a par with Putin.
But he's actually weak.
Exactly. That was what I was coming to. So that
Putin is playing Donald Trump like a violin, like a banjo. Putin is a master KGB agent, and Trump is a stupid real estate guy from the suburbs of Manhattan. So you're dealing with Putin laughing every night. He must be drinking his vodka and his champagne with joy. Actually, he doesn't drink very much. But Putin can be celebrating because Donald Trump is a weak American president pretending to be a bully, and he will simply spark economic slowdown for the world economy and chaos for democracies in Europe. And he will leave Ukraine unprotected with a phony peace deal that favors Putin and the Europeans. And thanks, I have to say, to Keir Starmer, who here's a British prime minister years after Brexit, who looks more European than anybody else in Britain. And Britain can be proud, in my opinion, to be a leader, along with Germany and France, of a Europe that needs to say no to Donald Trump.
It's really interesting, isn't it? Because the actions have pushed, if you like, Europeans into the idea of, hey, maybe being a liberal democracy isn't such a bad thing after all, because look what's happening. But at the same time, over in the States, you have a Democratic Party that is in shreds because of what happened in the election. And at the same time, they're pretty much powerless to stop, as we've seen in the past 7 days, over 300 Venezuelans being put on planes without due legal recourse.
And the White House ignoring court orders.
Because they were in the air, apparently. Yeah, exactly. That whole thing. And because you've got tattoos, therefore you're a gang member, which would put half the baristas in my part of the world in prison. Listeners, Alan is shaking his head in desperation there with that one and also this thing about, the saying, and then going after the judiciary. Now, this is a really worrying thing by saying this is a bogus judge who has stood up for this, and we want to subpoena this judge. That is, if you start dismantling a judiciary process, then you are in extremely dangerous waters, Alan.
Absolutely. We are witnessing the slow motion, not even so slow, dismantling of the rule of law in the United States. A White House run by a convicted felon who is ignoring, bullying, intimidating judges and threatening law firms that defend the former prosecutors who investigated Trump are now being prosecuted by Trump's people. This is the stuff of a banana republic, not the United States of America.
Well, this is the thing. I mean, he's put the legal firms on a blacklist not to deal with them, and therefore, Alan, yes, please come in,
But no, I wanted to complete the thought. Yeah. He's selected his personal lawyers to run the Justice Department, meaning Pam Bondi, the Attorney General, is a propagandist and a former lawyer who defended Trump in his impeachment case. She's now the boss, the Minister of Justice. Todd Blanche and Emile Bove were both lawyers to Trump in his January 6th insurrection case. They're now the deputy attorney generals. They're now prosecuting the prosecutors who investigated Trump. And we're dealing with an unprecedented situation, which frankly, I believe will take us toward a constitutional crisis. And our only hope is that the Supreme Court, which is packed with Trump nominees, actually decides to do the right thing and not let Trump trample law.
Now, the thing is, I do a phone-in show every Thursday called Viewpoint, and people phone in with their take on what's happening in the world. And it's very interesting, yeah. And I am accused of being a liberal, this, that, and the other. And they say what you don't get, Giles, is you don't get the damage that and Hunter Biden laptop comes into it, and auto pens and all that sort of thing. And they're saying what he's doing is he is clearing out years that Obama brought in and Biden and Clinton would have done. And this is just you being a bleeding heart liberal. And he's attacking the deep state. What is your reply to people who say, well, what you don't understand, Mr. Friedman, is that it's a deeply corrupt thing, and how dare Biden, pardon all those people who were basically criminals, quote unquote.
That's just Trump propaganda.
Right. That's the listeners who call in are just basically they have been fed this cult of personality from Trump, and then if you
let's remember that Donald Trump always uses conspiracy theories from QAnon and from others to he says things that are simply not true. He's a pathological liar. So I mean, if you think about who's negotiating with Vladimir Putin the future of Ukraine, it's a man who has threatened the Prime Minister of Denmark with military force to take Greenland, a man who insults Canada and King Charles by default. I thought it was very important that the Prime Minister of Canada, Mark Carney, came to visit King Charles. I thought it was very important that Zelensky was given an audience with King Charles after Trump had thrown him out of the White House. But imagine, would you trust your future, the future of your country, to a man who is willing to take properties from other countries and is behaving like a scofflaw? No. I mean, we Americans are dealing with a situation we've never had before. And actually, the most important thing that I want to say today before I leave you is this. What is frightening to me as an American is that the resistance in America doesn't exist. That Democrats are not only destroyed, shattered, fragmented, a party in ruins with no leadership, but the media is being cowed, is being intimidated. ABC television, CBS, and others are paying multi-million dollars to Trump, who's threatened to sue them for just doing their job. He's trying to intimidate law firms. He's trying to intimidate judges. He's trying to intimidate journalists. Jeff Bezos owns the Washington Post. He sacked their editorial page guy because he wants a pro-Trump Washington Post. He wants government contracts. Everybody is afraid. Fortune 500 corporate CEOs tell me in private that they're disgusted by what Trump is doing to the economy and to the society, but they're afraid to speak out because Trump is willing to target specific individuals, and there are death threats against the people that Donald Trump threatens on social media. So in America, we're dealing with a climate of fear. The Republican Party has been taken over by Trump and purged of all moderates, and the Congress is, 80% of the Republicans on Congress deny that Biden won the 2020 election. So we're in cloud cuckoo land, except it's the United States of America, which is the most powerful country in the world, and we're being run by a conspiracy theorist and a liar. And that, to me, is why I say this is the end of America as we knew it.
The book is called The End of America, A Guide to the New World Order. It's by Alan Friedman, who talks to you today. Alan, if people want to follow you online, where's the best place to find you if you do the internet and social media?
Sure. If people want to follow me on Instagram, I'm on Alan Friedman 3. And if people want to follow me on Twitter, I'm on Alan Friedman IT. And if people want to follow me on anything else, I'm around. And if you want to get the book on Amazon, you can get the book. It's called The End of America, and I'm Alan Friedman.
And you can also order it on our own virtual bookstore. The book is called The End of America. Alan Friedman, it's been an absolute pleasure to speak to you this morning.
Thank you.